One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB08 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday Five, the fiercest debate show on telly. I'm Alex Armstrong, covering for Darren Grimes, who's taking Angela Rayner's new 4-day working week rather literally. I'm joined by Apprentice star Mark Ryan Parsons, spin doctors Peter Barnes, Andy Williams, and the formidable Dame Andrea Jenkins. Tonight on the show. Over to you, Andy.
Freebies for MPs may not be popular, but they're inevitable.
Pete.
The Labour Party, just after being in office for weeks, are already under investigation for sleaze.
Should we cancel Notting Hill Carnival? Andrea.
The Labour government drops free speech laws after universities fear interest regarding China.
And Mark Ryan.
The Labour Party want to reduce the working week to 4 days. Are they justifying laziness?
This is 6 p.m. and this is the Saturday Five. Sorry, I did mean Ryan Mark, by the way. Just make a correction before we want to get this show off to a good start this week. So welcome to the Saturday Five. Thank you all for your lovely messages coming in on my debut presenting tonight. I can't promise it's going to be smooth, but it'll be great TV nonetheless. And for those of you who don't know me, obviously I'm not the Alex Armstrong from Pointless, but I can promise tonight's show will be anything but pointless. Also making his debut, we've got Ryan Mark from The Apprentice with us. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
And let's hope he's improved his negotiation skills because he's definitely going to need them tonight.
Yeah, don't fire me.
Hopefully not by the end of the show. We've also got our very own spin doctors, Alistair Campbell in the form of Andy Williams and a Dom Cummings in the form of Peter Barnes. No dodgy dossiers or mysterious trips to Durham tonight planned, I hope, guys. No,
not so far.
No,
we'll see.
So far, so good. And there's no one better to keep us men in line than the indomitable Dame Andrea Jenkins, who I hear is very good at smashing balls. Sorry, Ed balls, is that right? Yeah, I believe so, Well, now, you all know how this goes. Each guest outlines their argument about a chosen topic, and then we all pile in like a Brexit debate in a room full of Ramonas. Well, you know the drill, but I want to hear your views, so please send them in to gbnews.com/your say. No topics are off the limits for your questions in Ask the Five, so please keep them coming. I really, really want to hear from you all at home. It's so important. You are the most important part of this show. But before all of this, it's your headlines with the wonderful Sophia Wensler.
Alex, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. It's just gone 6 o'clock. Your top story this hour. A 32-year-old mother and a man who were attacked in separate incidents during the Notting Hill Carnival weekend have now died. Cher Maximen was stabbed at the carnival while attending the event with her 3-year-old child. The 32-year-old was taken to hospital in a critical condition, but despite the best efforts of medical staff, she died from her injuries. Meanwhile, Musi Imnetu, who worked as a top chef, was found unconscious on Monday evening near Notting Hill and also died from his injuries. Metropolitan Police said the deaths have been devastating for both families and they were both now being treated by the force as murder investigations. Police in the West Midlands are actively investigating the fatal stabbing of a 13-year-old boy. A murder inquiry has been launched following the tragic incident in Albury on Thursday, with no arrests yet made. West Midlands Police have assured the public that those responsible will be brought to justice. Chief Superintendent Kim Madill is urging residents to come forward with any information.
And we are following active lines of inquiry to find the suspects. We know that the incident took place inside his home, and I would appeal to anyone who has information to come forward. We have local officers and youth workers in the area over the coming days, so please speak to them directly if you have any concerns or information that you would like to pass to us.
In other news, a newly elected Labour MP has issued a public apology over reports of serious faults in some of his London rental properties. Jas Athwal, who represents Ilford South, owns 15 flats where tenants have complained about black mould and ant infestations. He says he's shocked at the reports and vowed to take immediate action to address the issues. Travellers at Heathrow are facing disruption as Border Force staff go on strike today. Around 650 members of the PCS union have walked out in a protest over rota disputes, with strikes lasting 4 days. Further disruption is expected from Wednesday as workers refuse to do overtime, leading to an overtime ban from the 4th of September. Despite the escalating tensions, the Home Office says it's committed to continuing the conversation to resolve the dispute. Right-leaning politicians are on the cusp of winning the most votes in German state elections for the first time since the Second World War. The decade-old AfD is likely to win in former communist states of Thuringia, whilst they're expected to tie in Saxony. The anti-immigration party has seen surging support following a knife attack in Western Germany last week, when 3 people were alleged to have been killed by a member of the Islamic State. However, the anti-establishment party is unlikely to have the seats needed to form a local government, with other parties refusing to collaborate. The social media platform X has been banned in Brazil after a long-standing disinformation row. The move follows a feud between Elon Musk and the Brazilian Supreme Court over a failure to block accounts accused of spreading fake news and hate. In response, Elon Musk posted on X, calling the move an attack on the #1 source of truth. The Oasis comeback tour shows have started to sell out for some dates after fans have been scrambling to secure tickets. Error messages and glitches are hampering people's attempts to land a spot on the reunion tour. Ticketmaster, one of the major sellers, insists their site hasn't crashed, but fans are still reporting outages and long queues. Now, US rapper Fat Man Scoop has died at the age of 53. That's according to his tour manager. The artist, whose real name was Isaac Freeman, had been taken to hospital after collapsing on stage during a performance in Connecticut in the US on Friday. In a statement, his management said, "We are heartbroken to announce the passing of our dear friend and client." Scoop had success around the world and topped the UK singles chart in 2003 with Be Faithful. And parts of England could see flooding this weekend as heavy rain and thunderstorms sweep across the southwest. The Met Office has issued a yellow warning for flooding, power cuts and travel disruption. Up to 75 millilitres of rain could fall in under an hour, with lightning, hail and strong winds also posing threats. Despite the uncertainty, residents across southern and central England are being urged to stay alert for sudden severe weather. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks very much, Sophia, and welcome back to the Saturday 5. Did you know Sophia actually booked me on my first show a couple of years ago? How serendipitous is that? Anyway, welcome back, everybody. I'm Alex Armstrong, and we've got a cracking show ahead for you. Thanks for all your lovely comments coming in on our lineup tonight. What a cracking lineup we have. What a panel, eh? Well, let's get started with today's first debate. I'm going to kick off, so I'm taking advantage of the chair. And we've obviously heard the horrendous news of the death of an innocent mother and chef who were stabbed at Notting Hill Carnival just last week. And since 2022, there has been a shocking 50% increase in crimes committed at the street festival, with over 300 arrests this year alone. They include multiple sexual assaults, possession of offensive weapons and attacks on emergency workers. And last time I checked, attacks on emergency workers kept the courts open for 24 hours to prosecute those criminals. I wonder what two-tier Keir's got to say about that. Well, let's compare that to 5 days of Glastonbury that only saw 89 arrests. None of those included stabbings or possession of offensive weapons. Notting Hill Carnival is meant to demonstrate the best of British Afro-Caribbean communities in the UK. But instead, it's become a carnival of death, drugs and destruction. Not something that I know most Afro-Caribbean people would agree with. So should we move the festival to Hyde Park, or should we just shut it down completely? Andy, what do you think? Should we shut down Notting Hill Carnival after this consistent year-on-year increase in crime?
No, absolutely not. It's an incredibly important moment in the calendar for the Afro-Caribbean community, as you said. It is largely, and of course there are these awful instances, and, you know, any violent crime must be condemned. But the reality is that this is, as a cultural moment, as a celebration for the vast majority of people who attend Notting Hill Carnival. By the way, it's 2 million people over a weekend, right? Now, again, not condoning it, but if you have 2 million people in a small space over 2 days, I'm afraid, unfortunately, there will be crime committed. And you're comparing apples with oranges, I'm afraid, Alex, because Glastonbury is about 1/10 of that number of people. So, of course, it's not the same level. And, I mean, we haven't even talked about the riots recently where there were far more arrests and there was far more violent crime. So I just don't think there's a comparison. I think it's an incredibly important event and needs to be maintained in its home. It can't just be moved anywhere else like any other event.
Well, how do we make the event safe? I think if we moved the event, there would be precautions put in place like we do at Glastonbury, where you've got, potentially metal detectors, more police, more control. What do you think, Dame Andrea?
I mean, I'm just thinking at the moment, as a mother of the lady who died who had children, it's horrific and it's tragic, and I think this should be a wake-up call for Starmer, for Khan. It's got to be handled differently next year, without a doubt. I do think we need more of a... Yes, like you said, I take your point, 2 million people, but we can't have any more people dying. I mean, a 50% increase is ridiculous. It's unsustainable. Is it going to be 70% next year?
Well, quite. So, Pete, what can we do? And what do you think we should do? Should we shut it down? I mean, it's obviously getting worse. People are dying. We didn't have any deaths last year at all, as far as I'm aware. And so it seems like it's becoming an untenable situation for people across
the thing
London.
that really staggers me about the Notting Hill Carnival is every year we have this exact debate. We say we should do something different next year. I'm pretty sure people said the same thing last year. We keep going round and round and round because of this rather preposterous argument that it's just a few bad bad apples. Well, I hate to tell people, but a few bad apples can still do a lot of damage. And we've just seen that a poor woman, a mother, and a gentleman who's a chef as well. You know, this girl is going to grow up without a mother. And
It also shows that you think, because the knife crime and drug crime has gone through the roof in London, I think that must be contributing as well.
Yeah, in my opinion, this poor woman and this gentleman have sacrifices on the altar of diversity, and that's what it is, because there's too many people keep kind of casting aside saying, oh no, it's all about diversity and everybody holding hands and singing Kumbaya. Well, I hate to break it, again, people are dying at these events, and I'm not in favour of banning it, but I do think we have to move it. It has to be policed correctly. I'm still surprised there is no kind of central organisation to this. It's just a little hodgepodge of people kind of putting it all together, so nobody is ever held accountable for it.
It is hard to control. I mean, I went to Notting Hill Carnival for the first time
Well, I was going to ask, have you been?
Yeah, this year for the first time. I absolutely loved it. And they actually did have metal detectors, lots of police. Like, the whole of the Met Police were there. But
was it waving flags, though, or was it actually pacing?
Well, that's it. I mean, huge amounts of crowds. I was so intimidated walking through the crowds, and you could see violence happening, lots of arrests taking place. Whether we can move it, I don't think that's possible, because that is the home of the carnival.
Exactly.
Notting Hill Carnival. I don't think
it's not just an event that you. That's exactly right. It's not just an event that you can drag and drop into another location. This is not a corporate event. This is not just something that somebody came up with. There's no profit making.
We want to save lives, right?
How can we say? But it's about the heritage of the event, and it's about the culture of the event.
So you've got to answer the question: how many of these instances are you willing to tolerate to keep the diversity element of it? That's the real question.
So Ryan, Mark, you're in favour of keeping it in Notting Hill?
Absolutely. I think it needs to be there. As Andy was saying, it celebrates its heritage, and it has to be there. Moving it to Hyde Park, I mean, or any other generic location, I just don't think that really recognises its heritage. And why we celebrate the carnival.
Dame Andrew, obviously we've heard from Sadiq Khan today, but nothing from Two-Tier Keir. What's he up to? Do you think he should come out and have a national statement about the deaths and the crime?
Exactly. Two-Tier Keir completely. I mean, this is so tragic. And as we've said, it's increasing each year, that the Prime Minister should be out there and actually making people feel safer.
Absolutely. Pete?
I was going to say, well, Two-Tier Keir can't say anything on this one because he can't blame the far right for it. So, of course, he's been quiet. He's nothing to say, has he? You know, it's rather ridiculous. For me, it has to be moved because, again, we've seen incident after incident after incident, and I always think the one murder might just be one too many. So I think it should be moved to Hyde Park so it can be policed correctly.
Does that rectified immediately by moving it to Hyde Park?
It might not be an immediate improvement.
Winter Wonderland, for example, is very dangerous.
But it might. But again, you seem to be able to police things better if it's in a controlled and confined space.
Final word to Andy.
I just don't think that's the case. I think, look, as I think Andrew hit the nail on the head in terms of how tragic these events are, and of course, one death is too many, but that is not resolved by completely turning a 60-year-old event on its head.
OK, very good stuff. Well, thank you all for indulging us in that debate. Who's up next for the chopping block of Saturday 5? I think it's you, Dame Andrew Jenkins, is it not?
It certainly is, yeah. Well, the Labour government has dropped free speech law after universities feared for China interests. Now, I was the former universities minister, and I was tasked with bringing the free speech bill through Parliament. Now, the bill protected free speech of both students, lecturers, and we've seen so many high-profile cases of lecturers being no-platformed or even losing their jobs for having a different view to left-wing student activists. Now, this week, Labour cancelled this free speech bill, in part because they fear that the Act could cause difficulties with countries such as China. Yes, you heard that right. Starmer's government is bowing down to communist China, whom has some of the worst curtailing of free speech globally, by cancelling free speech here in Britain. I think Red Starmer is a disgrace.
Well, interesting. Andy, what do you make of all of this? Is this government becoming more communist by the day? Is it leaning into China, or is it all just nonsense?
Yeah, it's a load of nonsense. I mean, the idea that this Labour government is communist, I mean, is just laughable. And any kind of language like that. I mean, I've seen so much
but look at the conversation.
No. But hang on. But all this conversation about it's an authoritarian government, and they're just. I mean, it's not true. There is no evidence of this whatsoever. During the riots, there needed to be a strong message sent out to people who were inciting, and it's one thing setting out a strong point of view on Twitter or whatever platform it is, It's another thing inciting violence and hatred online. And I'm afraid that's a criminal offence, and so it should be. And we cannot have a scenario where people... I'm sorry, I don't believe in absolute freedom of speech. I believe there have to be limits on freedom of speech, and I think Keir Starmer's absolutely right to impose them.
Now, what do you make of this, Pete? Obviously, we've seen...
Sorry, are we saying there should be no limits on freedom of speech?
But do you think he's right to cancel it?
The bill, the free
in
speech
universities.
bill.
On that particular bill, I think that's a challenging one. But I think if you look at the overall outlook of the Starmer government so far, I really, really don't think it's this authoritarian communist nightmare in the way that it's being positioned.
See, for me, if you actually look at the bill itself, one of the things that it's actually really focused on is giving academics the freedom to research into major areas. One thing that there's always brought up over this is the CAS report that was into puberty blockers. Most of that research was quashed or is underfunded because of universities not pushing and not being able to have access to the proper research materials, because they didn't like it. But that report on academic freedom, the United Kingdom ranks 66 in the world. We're behind Burkina Faso and Georgia. This bill was so important but not just in terms of students' access to information, but in terms of Britain moving forward academically. We have some of the best universities in the world, so why not try and make them better?
But it also does away. It also does away with non-disclosure agreements.
Yes, 100%.
Which actually it's imposed on a lot of students. If there's some sexual relationship going on with lecturers and students, and it's going to do away with that. So this protects people, and I think it's appalling that this is...
I don't know if
I completely agree with that.
I don't know if anybody saw the response from the government over its criticism of when it was criticised for pulling the bill. They said it was to stop Holocaust deniers having access to the campuses and stuff like that. This bill has nothing to do with that. It infuriated me, actually.
There's a worrying trend, don't you think, that we saw the CEO of Telegram locked up has been arrested in France. We saw today that Brazil are going to shut down X, formerly known as Twitter. Ryan, Mark, what do you think of all of this? Is free speech under threat now with socialists sort of in government across most of the world?
Yeah, I find it quite harrowing, and I think of my friends. I'm 24. A lot of my friends are at university, going back to do a master's, for example, and I feel like they're getting starved of accessing all kinds of debate and discussion and free speech, and I think that's essential. You need to be able to go to university and hear a vast array of opinions from all kinds of speakers, and I think that's the beauty of free speech and Western democracy, and I think what the Labour government is doing is actually taking that away, and I am very concerned for people my age that aren't really getting the right access to that.
What do you make of these criticisms of the Labour government, more generally on freedom of speech? Because, of course, we've seen quite a lot of that recently. How do they combat this? What is going to be Starmer's line when people start turning around and saying, well, actually, you're leaning into this censorship stuff, you're cutting freedom of speech bills? How does Labour respond, Andy?
Well, actions speak louder than words. And I think, actually, when people look at the facts, and if you look at the... Let's see what happens over the next few months, but I don't think you're going to see the advancement of a really authoritarian agenda from this Labour government. I just really don't. It's not in their blood. Actually, the irony is that lots of the same people who are criticising Starmer for being soft on crime, and by the way, if you look at his record, that's absolutely not the case. In fact, he's been accused of being too authoritarian on crime. That's not my view.
Is there some criticism of the Conservative Party? Obviously, they oversaw a lot of these policies that Starmer's using today.
Yes.
So how do the Tories recover from that?
I think the main issue is, when I was a minister, even with TAST, we're trying to bring this through. The civil service is so woke, they're trying to block you at every level. Look at Pretty. She got accused of being a bully.
Yes.
And thankfully Boris backed her, because we know Pretty, she's certainly not a bully, just because she was challenging civil servants. So there's so much blockage. We do need to change the way in the top levels of civil servants and have more like we have in the US. I think that's
a really genuinely interesting question. How do you think that would... How would that manifest itself? How could we improve that situation? Because, you're the ex-minister here, so I absolutely... And I've heard that from other people as well. How would we make a step change in terms of how the civil service works?
What I think we need to do is, obviously, the opposition party government, if it looks like they're going to go into government, they need to be getting their people ready.
Yeah.
It's more of a political role, isn't it, to ensure that actually legislation can get through. We saw with Rwanda, it had so many blocks from civil servants and unions. That's so undemocratic.
Quite. Well, I'd probably get rid of them all and start again, frankly. I think that might be the only way to move on. Anyway, coming up next on Saturday 5, we'll be discussing whether members of Parliament should give up freebies from tobacco, alcohol and junk food firms, because they apparently cause so much illness and death. I wonder. Sorry, I beg your pardon, everybody. What former Andrea Jenkins thinks of this, but you're with the Saturday 5. We'll be back in just a minute.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Football and gambling can go hand in hand and cause long-term problems. New figures show that young adults aged between 16 and 24 who have bet over the last year are more likely to report mental health issues compared to those in older age groups.
And joining us now to discuss this is Matt Burgess, who is a former gambling addict and now helps those to deal with their own gambling issues.
Yeah, look, I think gambling is one of those things that is so accessible now. You know, everyone's got a kind of mobile phone in their pocket, walks around with a kind of 24-hour casino, if you like. So I think it's really important that people realise that we have to sort of recognise that that is a month of quite condensed gambling, and we don't want people to sort of carry that on into their everyday life, because that's when it can become really risky and you know, it can become addictive.
I had no idea, though, that it was linked to first-time gambling. For the first time, people might be able to pick up and have a go. And then it doesn't end there. It goes on, because by then you've got the bug. Is that how it works?
You've got to remember, for things like the Euros, the World Cup, so you get a lot more people watching football and therefore potentially betting on football.
May I ask you about how severe your own gambling addiction got?
Well, look, I think there was a couple of touch points for me where I realised that things were getting out of hand. There were some times at university where, you know, I kind of thought, you know, I'm definitely doing this a bit too much, but, you know, kind of thought maybe it would move on once I left, but it didn't. It did follow me. And then, you know, I got to points where I was at my worst gambling 16, 17 hours a day. I was spending huge amounts of money. It can spiral out of control very, very quickly, and that was the important thing that we want to highlight is, you know, what can start as fun can become very, very dangerous in a sense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Sorry about that there. I got a little lost in the auto cue. As always, thank you for all your lovely emails about the topics coming in tonight. I've got a couple here from our viewers. Sylvie says, when the New Year's Eve fireworks are arranged, it's a ticketed event with limited people. Why can't Carnival be the same? Move it or lose it. Job done. Interesting. I think I agree with you there, Sylvie. We've got another one here from Dina saying, shut it down. It's become too violent and needs to be moved to a park where it can be properly policed. Interesting stuff. Right, anyway, we're moving on now. It's time for our next debate. Who's up next? I think it might be Andy Williams.
Might be me. MPs are being urged to stop accepting freebies to sports and cultural events from tobacco, alcohol, junk food firms and others because their products are harmful in many ways. Now, it might not be popular, but the reality is that this is just how the world works. As long as these gifts, these hospitality awards are transparently declared, I think it's a perfectly legitimate thing to do for MPs and for government to engage with businesses, because that's how they learn more about issues, how they can understand better what it is that businesses need. And as long as it's all done in the right way, I don't think it's a bad thing.
Andrea, what do you make of this? Obviously, you've been in politics for longer than any of us have, but more than 10 minutes at least. Have you ever had any freebies given to you?
Not with tobacco or anything like that.
Yeah.
As MPs, you go on delegations abroad. So, I mean, we went on one. I went on one with Angela Rayner, actually.
That must have been fun.
It wasn't to Ibiza, was it?
No, It's like an exchange with congressmen where you go over there, spend time, and it was with a Tea Party candidate.
Right.
So that was interesting. But that was all legit, etc. But I'm actually more concerned. Labour said that they was going to clean up politics. Look at the freebies that they've been getting. I mean, Angela Rayner, she had the use of a flat in New York over the New Year worth £4,000. We saw Taylor Swift concert tickets for Starmer at £4,000. The donor who gave the Labour Party £500,000 got his suits and glasses paid for, and then he got given a number 10 pass. So I think it's actually the public do not trust politicians, and we've got to clean it up. And it's got to start from the top. And I think that Starmer has set a completely bad example.
Ryan, Mark, what do you make of all of that?
Well, I agree with Andrea and Andy, but on the Starmer point, I think it's entirely hypocritical because as leader of the opposition, Starmer actually said he would restore standards to public life, but actually it seems to be the opposite. It's transpired to be the opposite. And I think what Andy was saying at the start, as long as it is completely transparent, which it is, when it comes to receiving gifts, wherever they're from, Parliament website has registered interest. We can actually see any kind of gift or whatever it may be. If the MP's working in a second job, it's all declared there and the public can access it. So that is what is...
I take quite an interesting view on this because I kind of help do this for a living, you know, facilitate the businesses with politicians. So, but the thing is, I think you hit an interesting word there, Andrea. I think that was the word trust. I think the one thing politicians need to do is rebuild trust. And I actually think maybe banning some of this stuff would go a long way to
especially
doing
at the top levels of government.
At the top level in particular, you know. The reason we have so much discontent on the streets is because nobody trusts each other. Institutional decline is at rock bottom now, and I think maybe just pulling back and some of the privileges that MPs have, it may be a good way of stepping forward in the public view. And I think it may be a good way, and I know I won't be popular for saying this, and I hate myself for saying this, drop the subsidised bars in Parliament. I think a lot of this stuff would go a long way to saying to the public, look, we're listening, we get you're not happy.
I think that's one thing, and I think that actually would, you know, the fact that I'm still surprised by how few people know that the bars in Parliament are tax-free.
That's true. That's not just MPs, actually. That's
no, it's everyone. Sorry, no.
Staffer, how do you feel about that?
I've taken many
There you go.
Right.
You get more upset from the staffers, actually.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I think when it comes to, you know, if you're taking it's an unpopular point, but I think the way the world works is that if you're a business, you will of course be taking people who you want to build relationships with out for dinner and to the horse races and to the football, and Keir Starmer going to see Taylor Swift and it's a £4,000 ticket. I understand that someone...
You're sounding pro-business. Did you...
Absolutely. I am pro-business. It's a pro-business government.
So, look, I mean, of course, there's going to be a little bit of give and take when you're in politics, right? But this is just a bad look when the public's confidence in Parliament is so low, Dame Andrea. What do you think? How can we restore... Is getting rid of these freebies part of restoring faith in the government?
I think it's got to come from the top. You know, it's a new government and what they do matters. And I think they've come to a bad start and they've got to start at the top and then it can filter down.
I'm just sorry, I've just had a recollection of a moment. That Keir Starmer said before he became Prime Minister that he would ban second jobs unless it was for keeping up qualifications.
Yes, he did.
That got watered down quite significantly now, and it's to do with consulting now. It seems to be that Keir Starmer's idea of lifting up standards is just to do just enough.
Do you know, I wish I'd have had a second job, so it'd be easier now. Now I've lost it.
Well, there you go. So, Andy, obviously...
Open to offers, yeah.
We obviously had, I think it was Lord Ali who gave Starmer £20,000 worth of clothing. He rebranded him. Isn't that a bad look for the party of the working class?
Well.
Yeah, look, I think that's really disappointing. When I heard that, I thought that's such a shame because actually Starmer has talked a really good talk on cleaning up politics, and God, did we need it, because we've had some awful, awful cronyism, particularly from the government before last, or actually 3 prime ministers ago, some really dreadful cronyism, and it does need cleaning up, and it undermines things like that. Undermine the message.
We're certainly going to talk more about cronyism later, but right.
Just quickly, I just feel so sorry for the voters. Obviously, I was working in the general election campaign, knocking on doors, and people that weren't supporting the Conservative Party, having faith in the Labour Party, because they were making all of these virtuous promises. Actually, look at what they're doing now. The sleaze is so disappointing. I'm not a Labour supporter at all, but I do feel very sorry for the people that put their faith in Starmer and his government, and they've been totally let down.
And Pete, what do you think? If you're a Tory, would you look back on the Tory years and think, oh, we should have maybe handled things a little bit differently? Boris obviously was obviously quite a controversial figure for some.
Oh, for me, the way the Tories handled most of the sleaze scandals, I thought was absolutely shocking, and it was amateur at best. I mean, let's look at the way the CCHQ deals with this stuff is just nonsense. But for me, I do think it is a collective effort of Parliament as a whole to bring back trust in themselves. And it's Parliament and politicians that have to do the mea culpa and say, we got this wrong. You know, we can make this party political all we like, but this stuff is really important. Trust in institutions is what holds the country together. And these institutions have to be more honest and open and come with an open heart and say sorry.
Interesting. We're going to talk more about cronyism coming up later. But next on the Saturday 5, should employees have the right to a 4-day work week? Well, they might under Sir Keir Starmer's proposals. Apprentice star Ryan Mark Parsons will give us his thoughts on this. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, weather will be turning increasingly unsettled. We'll also start to see some outbreaks of rain developing, even some thunderstorms in places. That's because high pressure is starting to pull away to the northeast of the UK, allowing our southeasterly flow to develop, and this wall front starting to introduce some cloud from the south. And that's certainly the case as we head through the evening into the overnight period. More in the way of cloud pushing northwards across England and Wales. Some showers starting to break out, locally heavy, particularly towards the far south and southeast towards the end of the night, where the odd thunderstorms possible. So the clearest skies lurking towards the northwest across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and here turning quite chilly in some rural spots into mid to upper single figures. Holding up though in the south, quite a humid night across some southern areas with lows in the high teens Celsius. As for Sunday, we'll start the day across the north and northwest of the UK on a fine note. Any early mist and low cloud lifting to give some sunshine at times. The sunniest weather towards the far northwest of Scotland. Heading further south, though, into England and Wales, more in the way of cloud around. And at this stage in the morning, we'll start to see a few showers breaking out, but particularly across the central and southern part of England. Here again, 1 or 2 heavy, even thundery showers are possible. As we head through the day, those showers start to become more extensive across some central and southern parts of England, eventually working their way north into parts of northern England into the afternoon too. So it's the northwest of the UK and across some western spots, seeing the best of the lingering brightness with 1 or 2 lighter showers here. But those showers across England and Wales there, eastern parts of Wales, they're locally on the heavy side and could give some flooding in places as well. Temperatures peaking in the southeast at a very warm and quite humid 27 Celsius. As for Monday, low pressure will be in charge, so it stays very unsettled. We could see some further thundery showers across the east and northeast of the UK, with rain also working its way in from the west, eventually turning fresher out across parts of Northern Ireland. Temperatures here no better than 18 Celsius into the afternoon. An unsettled start into the coming working week, but things perhaps turning a bit drier towards the middle part of the week, with temperatures returning to the seasonal average.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5, the liveliest debate show on telly. As always, thank you so much for emails coming in. So I've got a lovely message here from Kazi. Kazi says, too right, the politicians have lost trust. They have willfully been allowing the denigration of the UK for too long. Ooh, what do you think about that, Dame Andrea?
I think it's politicians. It's also the way the media portray things. Look how they really piled on Boris. So I think really, if we're going to clean up things, the media's got to play the part as well. We need some positivity, don't we?
Absolutely. Let's get some of that tonight. Well, anyway, it's time for our next debate. Who's going next?
I think I'll go next. Well, a lot of you will know me for being on The Apprentice with Lord Sugar, and I'm all about supporting business and making sure that entrepreneurs are supported. But I'm very concerned about Labour's new plans to reduce the working week to 4 days. I personally think it's an excuse for apathy, for laziness. I don't know what you think, but also, I'm 24, as I've already said tonight. I represent Gen Z. A lot of my friends are leaving university as postgraduates. They're going into the world of work for the first time. I'm worried about the trajectory of proposals like this. Where are we going to see working in the future just behind the screens? I think it's detrimental to career progression. I think the only way that you can go forward and be successful in life and in a career is by being in the office. And I'm worried about, is this a slippery slope to two-dimensional working behind a Zoom computer screen? I don't know what you think, Andy, about the proposals and whether you agree, but I am vehemently against it.
Well, I think it's horses for courses. So for certain people, they will be working in jobs and in organisations where a 4-day week is not viable. And actually, Labour is not saying we want to wholesale move every organisation and every working person to a 4-day week. That wouldn't work. It wouldn't work for me, wouldn't work for a lot of my colleagues. But I work for a firm where, and by the way, we have slowly but surely over the last sort of 18 months moved from 1 day in the office just after COVID to 2 days to 3 days and now to 4 compulsory days in the office for people who work with clients who have to have that face time. But we have other colleagues who work on the tech side of our business. They don't need to be in the office every day. And actually, they arguably don't need to work a 5-day week. Maybe they could work smarter by doing 4 days. And so I think it depends. I think it's about giving organisations the option. There is something about working smarter versus working harder.
So, Andy, look, my problem with this is that we've got a crisis on our National Health Service. We need to get more people becoming doctors, nurses, and other parts of our civil service as well. Is this now not another incentive to not go and join those specific industries? Because surely, if you're saying that businesses can all go and have a 4-day working week, why would I on earth want to work 5 days?
That's just not how it's going to pan out. You know, for some people, they will have the option, they will have the right to ask their employer, and their employer will be obliged to at least consider that seriously. But you know, for teachers, for doctors, for nurses, for lots of other people, that won't be viable.
Pete, so you know, productivity is at an all-time low. How is this going to contribute to making our economy stronger?
Well, to be honest, I'm going to do something I didn't think I was going to do tonight, and I'm actually going to agree with Andy. I think this is a horses for courses situation, and I do think this is depending on what you do. But I will say, though, that if you are starting off in certain industries, you should be in the office. You know, one of the issues that we've often found, particularly working with younger generations, is nobody knows how to pick up the phone and talk to another human being. I think this is one of the major problems, and I think this has been exacerbated by COVID, is nobody knows how to talk to another human being. Everybody seems to be very closed off and very scared to talk to somebody. And I think that is one of my main concerns about this policy. But the bit that I'm not overly keen on is the idea that an employee can ask for a 4-day week and it has to be taken seriously. I think all that's a little vague. I need to see some policy detail and then I'll make my mind up on that. But on a principle, I don't think that this is a terrible idea. Now, to fix the productivity argument, my main thing is what we actually need is some industrial strategy about what we want to do with the economy. The reason that it's stagnant is it's kind of flailing in the wind. We've no direction, we've no focus, and we don't have what used to be called joined-up government, where different government departments all work together for a single aim. That doesn't seem to happen. It's too much competing between compartments for money. Until you fix that, productivity will remain as abysmal as it is.
Well, Dame Andrea, look, I suspect this is going to hit the civil service first, considering that's the part of the government can control. How are we going to get our civil service to actually do anything?
Look, when I was, in government, the amount that was working from home. And I was also the Northern Ireland whip, and I remember the Secretary of State having an argument with the top civil servant to get people into the office, because they had appalling levels of people who was not in the office. So I think it actually demonstrates that the unions are in charge of government. And I'd like to ask Andy, they also said about stopping emails at 5. Are you going to put your out of office on at 5?
The right to switch off. I mean, it wouldn't work for my organisation, and it wouldn't work for me, wouldn't work for my colleagues. Certainly wouldn't work for my boss.
What happens if your boss emails and you have a fallout with your boss, and then you say, well, actually, he's just emailed me at 5:15? What's going to happen then? You take him to court?
I think all of this is about it's about rethinking the way. Look, in the post-COVID world, there needs to be a rethink about the way the world works, and we don't just need to continue doing things as we've always done. I'm glad to see more people back in the office, and actually, if you are spending time in central London, you can see it, you can feel it. It's getting a lot busy. It really is getting a lot busy.
Right, Mark. Lord Sugar never would have allowed this, surely would he?
Not, absolutely not. Well, he has a lot of properties in London, so actually, it is an interest to get people back into the office, and I just really think it's an excuse for apathy. I really do. Completely. I think this strengthening of workers' rights, the right to switch off, and the fact that you can request to work at home one day a week, I just think it's the step in the wrong direction. And you're already seeing a lot of my friends are work shy, I think, to be quite frank. A lot of young people just don't like to work. They want to find the easy way to make money. They're switching to OnlyFans and to Instagram.
Well, but what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? If that's
I think the one thing I think the way this should be really kind of rolled out is that it is a privilege and not a right. So I think employers can say you can work from home, but there should be a high.
But it's going to be a competitive then, right? Surely you're only going to attract people who say, "Well, I have 4-day working."
I know lots of organisations that have incredibly high kind of targets to hit, and if those targets aren't hit on a multiple amount of occasions, then it should be taken away. I think, again, this is about doing it in a sensible way, so that it actually works for both parties. Because, say, for example, if you're a carer or you've got children, this is actually a godsend to many, many people.
Look, if this is Labour's plan for growth for Britain, I think we're in serious trouble. I don't know if you saw a couple of days ago, many millionaires are going to leave Britain.
Yep.
We saw that with a doom-monger speech that Starmer did, that it's already hitting the housing market and investment into the housing market. I think we're in serious trouble. It's going to be a choppy 5 years under Labour.
I think you're right. And final words, final thoughts, I guess, on this. Are you going to ever go back into the office? I absolutely agree with you. So, coming up on the Saturday 5, are the Labour Party the party of sleaze? As Watchdog reviews the civil service appointments, one of which is a Labour donor. How is Andy Williams going to defend this one? I don't know. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Bad news for Liberal mothers who want to score virtue points by transitioning their kids, Lewis.
You know, this
tell us what it is.
Is a California dad is granted full custody of 4-year-old son after boy's mom tried to raise the child non-binary.
It's almost like cult-like behaviour. You've got the mother transitioning and then the transitioning the son as well. It's interesting that, you know, it's almost like a religion. You get, you know, if you're a Christian, your kids are probably going to be Christian. If you're, you know, Hindu, your kids are probably going to be Hindu. And if you're transgender, your kids are probably going to be transgender.
There's absolutely a causation there. We see plenty of times in videos. This is exactly it. And also we see the children of celebrities and people in particularly sort of liberal environments. It doesn't happen in some village in Indonesia or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so there's no such thing as a trans child. There's no such thing as non-binary. What there is are people with mental health issues and parents who want a virtual signal and also want to brainwash their children. This is an egregious example of that, where she was basically taking him to Disneyland, but he couldn't get on a ride unless he wore princess shoes. I mean, really evil, horrible stuff. You know, forced to wear a dress on his birthday. Just really nasty stuff. Now, here's the thing. You talk about the court going to him. No, that's not what happened. He took 800 pages of documentary evidence. He took 8 hours of police body camera footage showing this mental behaviour from the mother. And guess what? The courts ruled that the mum got him. They ruled against him. The only reason that he got custody of his child is because, thank God, a child protective services officer randomly got involved, looked into it themselves, and that's how he eventually got custody of the child. So the courts in America are utterly captured.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you so much for your emails about tonight's topics. I've got some good ones here for you. June and Alan write, NHS doctors and nurses and GPs do not work a 5-day week as we speak. I didn't know that. Do you know that? That's bonkers. Most already a 4-day week and my GP only works 2 days. South Yorkshire Police offer a 20-hour week. Nobody wants to work, June and Alan say. Anne-Marie says 4-day working week. Let businesses decide. Interesting stuff. OK, right, now it's time for our final debate. Who's up next?
I think that's me.
It is indeed. Over to you, Pete.
Right, the clock has struck 13. The Ministry of Truth has been built and Big Brother is watching. Welcome to Keir Starmer's Britain, where the main rule is do as I say, not do as I do. This week, Baroness Giselle Stewart, the Civil Service Commissioner, has confirmed a review into a number of appointments into the civil service by the Labour Party, who just so happen to be their biggest donors. Week after week, Sir Keir stood there and lambasted Boris Johnson for being sleazy and dirty and rotten, and Saint Keir could do no wrong. Well, isn't it funny, for 20 grand and a pair of glasses, you can get full access to him. This is the reality, that with its 2 attack dogs of Sue Gray and Matthew Doyle, Sir Keir has become the king of sleaze and the king of cronyism. The Labour Party has always been like this. They just hide it better. Welcome to Britain 2024.
Are you donning a new name for him, Sleazy Starmer? Is that what you're going for here?
Of course it is. Like, the main one here is, I think it's Waheed Ali, who was one of his biggest donors. He gave him hundreds of thousands, nearly thousands and thousands of pounds, and got full VIP access. And the Conservatives asked one simple question: who gave him the pass? To get that level of access to the Prime Minister is a staggering level of security.
OK, well...
I'm sorry, and the fact for them not to just be open and say, well, he did it, she did it, it tells me that there is something going on here that is...
OK, so Andy, look, there's a lot of this going on at the moment. Keir Starmer's being criticised of cronyism. Obviously, we had him in the Rose Garden just a couple of days ago, I believe it was, saying he's cleaned up politics, he's going to be different. And, of course, we've obviously had his business advisor who was sat in that famous Rose Garden photo. What does this say to the public about what this government's going to be like?
Well, I think this is cock-up rather than conspiracy, but I did say before the break that I think this is really disappointing. You know, as a Labour member, as a Labour supporter, it's very difficult to defend. You know, it's a real shame because I do think we need in some ways to clean up politics, and I think a lot of the rhetoric that Keir Starmer came out with in the run-up to the general election was right. I do think that Boris Johnson, in particular, debased standards in public life to an outstanding degree, and I really, really think he will be remembered as somebody who caused great harm in that respect. I think Liz Truss, the less said about her, the better. But I would say that, you know, Keir Starmer and Labour, they have to practice what they preach. And if they don't, then they will be viewed in the same light. So I am concerned.
You've got some strong words. I can hear you there, Dame Manager. Go on, go for it.
And Starmer and all of them, they're so sanctimonious. Look when he was in opposition. But they seem to get away with it.
Yeah.
Look at Beergate. I mean, that was pretty disgusting. I mean, Boris, he had...
There was no case to answer. We know that. We know there was no case to answer on that. We know.
They had all the takeaways delivered. There was beer.
It was a Daily Mail. It was a Daily Mail hit job.
I think most people in this room have been in a room with Angela Rayner. I often remember that very specifically. The fact that he suddenly conveniently forgot she was there. I just don't understand how anybody could say that there's no case to answer. And I think Jane Andrew is completely correct. The Labour Party have continually been...
They always get away with it, but I don't think they will this time.
Why is that? Why do they get away with it so much? Was it because they're not in government?
Because there's a lot of the media, unfortunately, tends to be left-leaning.
Oh, come on.
Are you serious? Also, look at how many of those in the media, their partners are in the civil service or a relative. And we've had so many leaks from the Cabinet Office, including people who works in the ITV, passing stuff on to them. So I think that's a problem. But why I don't think they'll get away with it this time, look at the approval ratings for Starmer, -16. I think people are waking up to the fact that Labour are liars. And also... Sue Gray is at the heart of
Yes,
this.
completely
Now, let's
agree.
not forget Sue Gray was a propriety and ethics person. She should know better than anybody what this looks like. But let's not forget her son got 10 grand from this donor. So I think it stinks. It needs cleaning up. And I'd like to see every media outlet, including the BBC, calling Starmer out.
Ryan, Mark, do you think there's a two-tier media when it comes to Labour?
Well, I think so, yes. And I definitely I think organisations like the BBC are definitely very lenient towards Labour. But I really have to echo the same sentiment as Andrea in terms of it really does stink, all of this sleaze. It's pure hypocrisy. Like I said earlier in the show, Keir Starmer was saying that he's going to clean up politics, life in public office, and as leader of the opposition, he was saying that the Tory party were handing out jobs to their mates, dodgy contracts, etc. But look at what we're seeing with Lord Ali. He donated £500,000 to the Labour Party, gets a number 10 pass. He hosted a post-election reception in number 10. Look at the sleaze happening here.
So Andy, look, so there's a lot of criticism, of course, about the unions getting their pay deals soon as Labour walk through the door. You've got Lord Ali, you've got all these other things. We also, when we talk about two-tier media, we've not seen Keir Starmer ask a single question to GB News yet.
Come on.
Is that a sign?
This two-tier media thing is, I mean, the written press in Britain is overwhelmingly centre-right and right-wing. I mean, that is just an absolute...
I think our viewers would disagree with you, you know.
Well, I'm sure that GB News...
The Guardian is right-wing, the Independent...
No, I said the written press is overwhelming. Of course, I'd never pretend that the Guardian is right-wing. Come on, let's be serious.
But the Guardian is read by people in certain industries.
The Guardian's not read by many people at all, let's be completely honest about it.
People who are in certain positions in society that influence huge amounts of public policy. There was a survey done at the BBC about what is the most popular the newspaper subscription. It was the Guardian by like 20-30%. It's staggering. To argue that Labour, because it's right-wing majority.
Okay, the Labour Party is, trust me, the Labour Party is not about, and we're going to be talking about an issue around Margaret Thatcher in a minute, and that was on the front page of the Daily Mail yesterday, on a day when there were all sorts of other really important things going on in the world, and that was the headline on... I mean, the idea that the written press are somehow biased towards Labour...
Well, we know, but they did pull Boris for doing the decorations of Downing Street. That was a headline media for weeks.
I'm sorry, but I have to be a bit careful what I say about that. But I mean, that was bonkers. I mean, really, come on, that was not okay.
Final word, Ryan, Mark. Come on.
Well, I just feel so, again, like I said earlier, I feel so sorry for the voters. How much coverage was given to Ian Caulfield as well, who donated £20,000?
Well, enough that he stepped down.
£5,000 to Rachel Reeves, and then he becomes a director of the Treasury. How much coverage was given to that?
Okay, right. Let's move on, shall we? So loads more to come tonight on this brilliant show, including our big interview with Conservative MP Matt Vickers. He's going to be telling us why he's backing Robert Jenrick to be the next Tory party leader. Plus, we'll be scrapping over the Margaret Thatcher portrait and asking whether Oasis can save the world. Well, what do you think? Do you think they can? I don't think they can. I don't think they can, but we're going to talk about it anyway. First, your weather with Marco.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, the weather will be turning increasingly unsettled. We'll also start to see some outbreaks of rain developing, even some thunderstorms in places. That's because high pressure is starting to pull away to the northeast of the UK, allowing our southeasterly flow to develop, and this wall front starting to introduce some cloud from the south. And that's certainly the case as we head for the evening into the overnight period. More in the way of cloud pushing northwards across England and Wales. Some showers starting to break out, locally heavy, particularly towards the far south and southeast towards the end of the night, where the odd thunderstorms possible. So the clearest skies lurking towards the northwest across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and here turning quite chilly in some rural spots into mid to upper single figures. Holding up though in the south, quite a humid night across some southern areas with lows in the high teens Celsius. As for Sunday, we'll start the day across the north and northwest of the UK on a fine note. Any early mist and low cloud lifting to give some sunshine at times. The sunniest weather towards the far northwest of Scotland. Heading further south, though, into England and Wales, more in the way of cloud around. And at this stage in the morning, we'll start to see a few showers breaking out, but particularly across the central and southern part of England. Here again, 1 or 2 heavy, even thundery showers are possible. As we head through the day, those showers start to become more extensive across some central and southern parts of England, eventually working their way north into parts of northern England into the afternoon too. So it's the northwest of the UK and across some western spots, seeing the best of the lingering brightness with 1 or 2 lighter showers here. But those showers across England and Wales there, eastern parts of Wales, they're locally on the heavy side and could give some flooding in places as well. Temperatures peaking in the southeast at a very warm and quite humid 27 Celsius. As for Monday, well, low pressure will be in charge, so it stays very unsettled. We could see some further thundery showers across the east and northeast of the UK, with rain also working its way in from the west, eventually turning fresher out across parts of Northern Ireland. Temperatures here no better than 18 Celsius into the afternoon. An unsettled start into the coming working week, but things perhaps turning a bit drier towards the middle part of the week, with temperatures returning to the seasonal average.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is your chance to win a £36,000 secret salary in the latest Great British Giveaway. That's like having £3,000 each month for an entire year. Extra cash in your bank account that you can do whatever you like with. Take a year off and keep it to yourself. You don't even need to tell the taxman, as it's totally tax-free. For a chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB08 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
An army veteran has become the world's most tattooed woman after a 10-year journey to ink 99.98% of her body. I mean, that's really nearly everywhere. But I wonder, I mean, yes, she is unusual, and you'd know her if you met her, frankly, wouldn't you? But are tattoos acceptable they're becoming more and more acceptable just amongst all of us, aren't they? But what about in the workplace?
99.98% of her body tattooed. Do you think this would affect the way that she is received at work?
I do affect it would how she is seen at work, just purely because tattoos are still so stigmatised in the workplace. In today's rapidly evolving society, the traditional standards of what is socially acceptable are being redefined. Facial tattoos, full body tattoos, once stigmatised, are increasingly seen as a form of personal expression, and there shouldn't be a barrier to one's professional or social life.
If you are going for a job, for instance, we make up 90% of our minds about somebody within the first 3 seconds. And I have written a book on body language, and the face is just so important. You need to have the smile, you need to be able to read the facial expression, even when we're speaking. Now, if the face is really heavily tattooed, you can't do that.
Jade said that there is still this stigma, particularly to facial tattoos. We do judge people with tattoos, don't we?
We do. Unfortunately, we do, because it's not the norm. And as a human being, we tend to judge what is not the norm. And as Jade says, we are getting much more used to it. It is much more socially acceptable. But a lot of firms will say, if you've got a tattoo, you cover it. We don't want tattoos in the workplace.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Saturday night, and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Alex Armstrong, along with Dame Andrea Jenkins, Ryan Mark Parsons, Peter Barnes and Andy Williams. We have so much more excitement to bring you in this hour. It's 7 p.m, and this is the Saturday 5. And still to come tonight, we'll be interviewing Tory MP Matt Vickers on why he's backing Robert Jenrick to be next leader. And also this hour, Dame Andrea Jenkins and Andy Williams will face off in the Saturday scrap. Oh, it's going to be a good one, I can feel it. They're going to be doing that over the Prime Minister's decision to remove Margaret Thatcher's portrait from number 10. And we'll be answering your questions in Ask the Five. Please send them through to gbnews.com/yoursay. But first, it's your Saturday night news with the brilliant Sophia Wensler.
Alex, thank you. Good evening from the GB Newsroom. It's just gone 7 o'clock. Your top story this hour: a 32-year-old mother and a man who were attacked in separate incidents during the Notting Hill Carnival weekend have now died. Cher Maximin was stabbed at the carnival while attending the event with her 3-year-old child. The 32-year-old was taken to hospital in a critical condition, but despite the best efforts of medical staff, she died from her injuries. Meanwhile, Museum Netu, who worked as a top chef, was found unconscious on Monday evening near Notting Hill Carnival, and he also died from his injuries. Metropolitan Police said the deaths had been devastating for both families, and they were both now being treated by the force as a murder investigation. A newly elected Labour MP has issued a public apology over reports of serious faults in some of his London rental properties. Jas Athwell, who represents Ilford South, owns 15 flats where tenants have complained about black mould and ant infestations. He says he's shocked at the reports and vowed to take immediate action to address the issues. Right-leaning politicians are on the cusp of winning the most votes in German state elections for the first time since the Second World War. The decade-old AfD is likely to win in former communist states of Thuringia, whilst they're expected to tie in Saxony. The anti-immigration party has seen surging support following a knife attack in Western Germany last week when 3 people were alleged to have been killed by a member of the Islamic State. However, the anti-establishment party is unlikely to have the seats needed to form a local government. Restrictions on the movement of sheep and cattle have been brought in parts of England after confirmed cases of the animal disease blue tongue. A restricted zone is in place in Norfolk and Suffolk to mitigate the risk of further cases. That's according to the Department for Environmental, Food and Rural Affairs. 5 premises are known to be infected with the disease. Blue tongue causes swelling and ulcers in infected animals, but it can't harm humans. Now, the Oasis comeback tour shows have started selling out for some fans after they were scrambling to secure tickets. Error messages and glitches are hampering people's attempts to land a spot on the reunion tour. Ticketmaster insists their site hasn't crashed, but fans are still reporting long queues. And US rapper Fat Man Scoop has died at the age of 53. That's according to his tour manager. The artist, whose real name was Isaac Freeman, had been taken to hospital after collapsing on stage during a performance in Connecticut in the US on Friday. Scoop had success around the world and topped the UK singles chart in 2003 with Be Faithful. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Alex Armstrong and I can promise you that you're all in for a very lively hour. So let's crack on with tonight's big interview. One of Reform's biggest donors, the former owner of Newcastle United, has decided to switch his allegiance back to the Conservatives after backing Tory leadership hopeful Robert Jenrick this week. The move comes as a critical conference season begins, with other key figures like Priti Patel, Tom Tugendhat, Mel Stride, Kemi Badenoch and James Cleverly all vying for the leadership bid. Joining us tonight is Matt Vickers MP for Stockton West, who will share his insights with us on this major shift in political support. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. You're supporting Jenrick in the leadership contest. Is he really going to be the one to crush Farage's momentum?
Good evening, Alex. Of course he is. Of course he is. I think, you know what, Sir John Hall, incredibly bright, incredibly successful bloke, legend in the northeast of England, went reform this time and has now decided that Robert Jenrick's the man to win back his trust, to get his faith back in the Conservative Party. And that's exactly the sort of thing that we want to see happen across the country between now and the election. And you know what? We've got to get on with that job because we've seen what Labour are doing to the country already.
Yeah, so what happens if Jenrick doesn't win? Obviously, this is a really big donor. He's quite spectacularly gone from reform back to the Tories, back to reform again, and back to the Tories again. What happens to that money? What happens to that support? Is this momentum only going to last a short period of time if Jenrick doesn't win?
We've got several fantastic candidates standing for the leadership of our party. I think Robert Jenrick's the standout favourite. Well, he is for me. He came up, we had hustings in our part of the world. Our members got to meet them, got to grill them, got to give them all the tough questions, and we got to see what they had to offer. And at the end of that, my thoughts were that Jenrick was the standout candidate, that he's the right guy for me and my part of the world. But you know what? There's lots of other things on offer. There's a long race ahead. But you know why Robert's the man? Robert's the man because he unifies. So our party needs to learn lessons. It's been sent out a very tough message by the electorate. We need to lick our wounds, listen to what they've said, and go back with the sort of offering that they want. And Robert Jenrick's doing just that. He's the guy who understands what's gone wrong. He's the guy, a very principled guy who was brave. You know, he was the guy who was the immigration minister. He gave it up when he didn't think that we were delivering what needed to be delivering. I think that earns him some brownie points from me. A guy who's willing to, you know, put the good of the country, put the good of these things before his own political career. I think that's a really positive thing. But he's also a guy who's had a lot of positions in government. He was Secretary of State at the MHCLG, saw the challenges that went on there. He knows that we need to build up instead of building out. He knows that we need to provide homes for the next generation. He gets his head around all those arguments. He's out there listening. And most importantly, one of the things that we got wrong as a party was we spent too much time arguing with ourselves and not dealing with the issues facing the country. Robert is a man who can unite this party. We've seen people coming out from left, right and centre to back him. And that's what we're about. We've got to get our heads down, get a good offering for the British people and take it back to them at the next election, because we can't afford to leave Labour in power a minute longer than need be.
Pete, what do you think?
Well, I like this argument, but there's also one of the biggest problems I think the Conservatives face. It's actually an institutional one, and that was mainly CCHQ. For as long as I've been a member of the party, pretty much everybody has complained that CCHQ doesn't know what it's doing. And I think we've shown that most accurately in the last general election with one of the worst campaigns I think I've ever seen. And it's looking like, you know, the next tip for the honours of the peerages and all the rest of it. My issue and question, Robert, sorry, Matt, is going to be, well, no matter who becomes the next leader, what are they going to do to shape up the actual running of the party, the actual institution itself? It's not just about getting the right policies and the right kind of people. You've got to actually know what you're doing. And do you think Robert's really going to be able to change that?
I think he very much will. I think you need to get yourselves down to the hustings, give him a good grilling and tell him about that. But I think he actually gets it. He's out there talking to members. He's speaking to hundreds of members in my patch the other week. He's out there doing that today. I think he's touring the country left, right and centre. I think he's probably putting more miles in than many candidates to hear from members, hear what they've got to say about that, hear from some of those candidates. There's a huge number of those candidates in the red wall in seats that we lost who are backing Robert because they think he is the man who can go in there, fix that and get us on the road to winning again. And you know what? It's a huge challenge. We've got to get on with it and we've got to deliver. Andrea.
Hi, Matt.
Hi.
Matt and I go back a long way. Helped campaign when I was standing against Balls, didn't you, Matt? What I'd like to know really is, it's more of a party question. I got the email today. I assume you're still Deputy Chairman, are you?
I resigned as Deputy Chairman of the party.
Oh, really? Oh, so you might not be able to answer this then.
Nobody can keep up. Nobody can keep up, can they?
Well, I got the email tonight saying that we're going back to as we were years ago at the party conference, where members are going to be there speaking on debates and really challenging, you know, the top levels of party, which is, I think, is fantastic. So I'd like to know, can we expect any surprises at conference? And also, I mean, I'm only going because I got a free ticket. Ex-MPs get free tickets.
Two-tier Tories, is it? Two-tier Tories now. Gosh,
it's a consolation prize. Are we expecting many members to actually come to it? Because the members I speak to are really down, fed up, and they're not going to bother going.
Well, First of all, what a cracking campaign it was in 2015. If we'd done a bit more of that.
It was called the Get Balls Out campaign.
And we'd have done much better this time. And you also put on good grub down there. I remember that. That's probably a thing to learn going forward for campaign. But actually, I think you're right. I think it's important that those people in our party who have those front bench positions are out there listening to the members, getting around the country. At the moment, they're everywhere, these nominees for this leadership campaign. I think that's something that has to carry on. You have to engage members. People have to be able to speak to people. The problem with that is always the broadcast media who will find the one person who's got a very strong opinion on something, and the entire discussion in the broadcast media will all be about the one person at the back who had an opinion that's a little bit controversial, and it will overshadow all coverage ever. Not on a good channel like GB News, but on many of those other
quite right,
less, reputable channels, you know. So I think there's a balance, but I think our members of Parliament, our leading politicians have to make themselves available to the members and let members be heard.
Andy?
Matt, I know that one of Robert's flagship policies is leaving the ECHR. Now, I think that's completely the wrong thing to do at exactly the time that we're starting to rebuild relationships with our European allies and more widely. But why does Robert Jenrick think this is in line with British people's priorities when what they're really worried about is the cost of living and is getting the economy going again for the benefit of their families?
I think, you know what, good relationships never confine people as to what they're doing or what they're not doing. And our relationship with our EU partners is one thing, and we've got to get on with that. But actually, the choice about the ECHR, Robert was in there. He was the immigration minister. He's seen the things that prevent us having a real functioning immigration system that allows us to pick the people who should and shouldn't come here, allows us to have secure borders. That means we know who comes across that border and walks down the street tomorrow. He's seen the innards of it. He knows what needs doing to get on with the job. And that's exactly why I think he's probably the right man to get on with the job and deliver it.
Right, Mark?
Hi, Matt. I've been a member of the Tory party since the age of 16. I'm 24 now, and a lot of my friends that are fellow members, well, they've actually resigned their memberships because they feel disenfranchised by the party. How do you think Robert Jenrick is actually going to bring young people back and restore their faith in the Conservative Party? Do you think he's the man for that?
So I think actually two factors probably. I think one of the biggest things affecting young people in this country, or one of the largest things, is actually around housing. It's around the struggle that people have to get on the housing ladder. Probably more so down here than in my part of the world, but it's still a huge challenge for people in my part of the world. I think Robert, having been in MHCLG, if you look back, he's the guy who looked at housing, looked at the fact actually when you're building this stuff, it's not about building the cheapest, crappiest housing. It was about building things that were beautiful, that added value to their surroundings. It was also about creating more dense housing in urban areas rather than just sprawling in the greenfield. People keep oversimplifying the arguments around housing. You either churn up all the greenfield to build houses, or you just stop building houses. That's not the choice. That's just not the way it is. It's about actually making something that works for communities, but also creates the new housing that the next generation needs. He knows that more than anybody, and he was a guy who got stuck in and delivered more housing during his time in the MHCLG than anybody else. So I think he gets that argument, but I also think it's about people who are switched on. If you look at the campaigns of our leaders at the moment, and you look at the people who are putting themselves out there on social media, who are engaging with that new social media front, Robert's right there at the front of it, and I'm sure he would be as leader of the party. And I'm excited to see what he has to offer next.
OK, well, look, but let's get real, right? Farage has got massive momentum with reform. He's seeing his numbers explode. He's saying he might even be overtaking the Liberal Democrats soon. Is Robert Jenrick, has he even got half the charisma that Farage has, or the notoriety, let's say? How is he really going to compete with Nigel for the same voters? But let's face it, the Tories do need to bring back those reform voters to win. But is he really the guy that's going to do it, Matt? Come on.
I don't think we should ever underestimate what Reform have to offer and what they're on with and their campaigning momentum. But actually, do you know what people wanted at this election? When I knocked on those doors, huge numbers of people who didn't bother to vote, numbers of people like Sir John Hall, actually, who went Reform this time. They wanted a Conservative Party that knew what it was on about, that was talking to the country, taking on the challenges that the country's facing rather than arguing with itself and creating, put those energies, give people that offer, and they will come back to this Conservative Party. It's got a lot to offer. We're going to be the people who are going to stop the boats. The people who voted Reform this time to stop the boats and solve the immigration problems facing this country, actually, that's why we've got that huge Labour majority in Parliament. That's why we're seeing what's going to happen in the next couple of years to immigration in this country. That's why we're seeing the rot that's setting in number 10 with all these dodgy appointments. All that has happened because we didn't give people an offering. It's on us to get ourselves out there, give people something they can vote for, and that's exactly what Robert Jenrick's going to do.
Matt, that's an extremely compelling statement there. I'm sure our viewers will be listening to your words intently. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. Really appreciate your time. Well, let's have a digest that a little bit further between the panel here. Has anyone got any thoughts on Jenricks' campaign? And more importantly, how does he win as this big leadership contest? There's lots of Tories going for it, right? How does he break through the middle? Because there's quite a lot of left-wing Tories now, aren't there?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm backing Pretty. I mean, Pretty's a long-time friend because if you look at her voting record, she's a true Thatcherite Conservative. She was one of the Spartans. She's voted more to the right of the party. Now, I was also Robert's PPS during COVID, and I know Robert very well. He's a very bright guy. And if it's Pretty and Robert in the final two, then we're in a better place. I certainly don't want to see Kemi, because if you look at her voting record, it's nothing like...
I agree. I do agree with you.
That rhetoric demonstrates, and I don't want to see the other two, I'm afraid.
See, this has always been my problem.
But Pretty, definitely.
Yeah, this is my problem. I always... I call myself one of those kind of... I just hate everything and everyone kind of Tories, because I'm sick to death of saying, like, oh, these are left-wing Tories. He's a left-wing Tory, and he's a left-wing Tory, and she's a right-wing Thatcherite and all the rest of it. The greatest strength of the Conservative Party, the thing that makes it the most successful political party, is the broad church.
Well, let's face it, up until the last election, I agree with it. It's destroyed the party, this broad church.
Okay, but
look at
Brexit. No, it's not.
I agree.
Because it wasn't the broad church. One faction took over, and then you all start playing political litmus tests.
The One Nation.
Yeah, but then you also you had the dominance of the ERG, and you couldn't even get rid of Theresa May, correct?
So was the last Tory party an absolute electoral gift for Keir Starmer?
Yes.
And how does he beat someone like Robert Jenrick, who is tough on immigration, if he is, let's say, the Tory party candidate for the next election?
Well, I think all this talk of factually, I mean, I'm smiling because I think all of this is great news for Labour. You know, the more that the Tories fight like rats in a sack, and they will do over the next couple of months during the remainder of the leadership contest, you know, that's good for Labour. And actually, if you look where Labour went wrong for a while was because they went down a hard left-wing rabbit hole and there was factionalism, and actually, when they got the party back together and moved to the centre ground, they were electorally successful. But what I would say is, on Robert Jenrick, I think he's the candidate that Starmer would fear the most. I think as someone who wouldn't vote for him, I think he's probably the best candidate.
Do you feel that Farage is the person that Keir Starmer fears the most, considering that he got, 98 second places in Labour seats? That's pretty impressive.
Well, I think, like you were saying to Matt, Farage has that charisma, he exudes that personality that I think a lot of young people resonate with. And that's why you're seeing a vast number of young people supporting reform. Whether Jenrick or any other leadership candidate can actually replicate that same charisma, I don't know. But I'm also with Pretty. I think she's had experience in opposition, she's had experience in government. I think she's the person that actually young people are supporting. A lot of my friends, fellow young Tory members, are looking at the likes of Priti Patel, and they're seeing strength and the same kind of strength and power that you can see in the likes of Nigel Farage.
Pete, look, Priti Patel oversaw mass amounts of immigration into this country. A lot of viewers will be writing in saying, right, well, is she actually the person that's going to stop the boats?
Well, this is the thing. She was given the opportunity and she failed to do it. I mean, I'm not really against Priti. I actually do quite like her, but I mean, she does have to answer that question a lot better than she has in the past.
Who would you choose then?
I'm not saying. I have my favourite, but I'm not saying.
What a cop-out.
I'm waiting for the arguments.
Even I said it. I don't even have a vote.
What I will say is I've been a member for a long time, and I haven't voted in any of the leadership elections because I think the Conservative MPs do not take the contest seriously enough. Too many people wander around Westminster thinking they're, in the thick of it. Sorry, they're thinking they're in the House.
I think it should go straight to members, personally.
I won't go that far.
I would.
But I think one thing that I would say is that if the Conservative Party spends so much time fussing over reform and Nigel Farage, they will get nothing done. They have to fix this internally and leave Farage and his nice little bandwagon of lunatics.
So, by the way, you want the candidates to scrap a little bit more, have a little bit of a tougher stance with each other.
I don't think they need to scrap, and I don't think they need to really debate. It's just into blue on blue action, as it's always called. But what they do need to do is actually have these real debates, but have them honestly and have them competently.
Okay, great stuff. Well, talking of scrapping, coming up next on the Saturday 5, it's the Saturday Scrap. Dame Andrea Jenkins and Andy Williams are going to face off each other. Sorry, I almost screwed that one up there. We'll face off over whether Keir Starmer should have removed the portrait of Margaret Thatcher from number 10. You're with the Saturday 5. I told you it's going to be a blast. You're live.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ben, do you like baking?
Baking? Only flapjack.
Why flapjack?
It's just a childhood favourite. Otherwise, no, I don't have time to do anything, no.
Yeah.
No, do you?
I love baking.
Really?
Yeah, I find it really relaxing.
You never bring in any treats for me.
I know, I was thinking
Scones
that's
or
next,
cakes?
isn't it? Scones.
Oh, it's my birthday next week.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
You know what to do?
I've
You're not
really
here,
dug
are
a
you?
hole for myself now, haven't I? No, I actually am here next week.
OK, well, you know what to do then.
OK. I'm delighted to say that we're joined now by JP from Bridget's Bakery.
BB is the brand, is the face, is the smile. She originated the motto, making London smile, so that's what we try to do on board of our lovely buses and in our shops.
Which is probably the most British thing you could imagine.
Yes, we try to do a 3-in-1. We try to really embrace all of the culture and history, so Roadmaster buses, 1970s. Oh, nice pictures. We have the full afternoon tea, 1700.
JP, is it scone or scone? And also, where does the word come from?
Ben.
Is it of French origin?
Ben, how very dare you asking me? Are you trying to actually put me under the spotlight? I would say, according to a Belgian person, it's scone.
Scone.
Exactly.
Oh, that's what
so I
you
like
say.
to do a mix of both. But I would say...
Sorry, JP.
Common as muck. and another key question which many Brits get tangled up in is it the jam first or the cream first?
So, I'll tell you a very scientific fact I just made up on my way here this morning. The best way to eat your scone or scone is, first step, you split it in 2 halves.
Yeah.
On one half, you do the cream and jam. The other half, the jam and cream.
Oh, no.
Then, if you feel like people looking at you, you should squash it together. And if really the tension is quite high, you should give your scone to the nearest person holding a chef jacket. There you go.
That sounds too diplomatic.
Yeah.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you so much for your emails coming in tonight's topics. I've got Adrian here who said, I have voted for the Tory party for 39 years. Not again. Reform UK for me. Interesting. I think there's a lot of GB News viewers who feel that way. But anyway, let's get on to the next part of the show. So now it's time for this. Now it's time for tonight's main event. A portrait of Margaret Thatcher has been moved from her former study in Downing Street by Sir Keir Starmer. Was he right to do this? Or was this a huge sign of disrespect towards Britain's first female Prime Minister and a very popular working class one, might I add? I bring you the Saturday Scrap with Dame Andrea Jenkins and Andy Williams. Second out, it's round one.
Over to me.
Go ahead.
Well, I think that Margaret Thatcher was there's no doubt she was a highly consequential Prime Minister, and many people would say she was a great Prime Minister. I would say that depends on your point of view. And I think if you're a Labour Prime Minister who's just come into number 10, why wouldn't you consider moving that portrait that's bearing down on you every day? I don't have a strong view about him taking it down, but I certainly don't think that he's done something dreadful here. I think it's entirely up to him. It's his office. It's actually where he lives. And I don't understand the huge outcry that there's been that suggests he's done something really terribly wrong here.
Well, I think he's a barefaced liar, Starmer, actually. Let's not forget that during the election, he wrote an op-ed for the Telegraph praising Margaret Thatcher. He's conned the voters. He used her to get the vote, and now he's actually removing her picture. So one thing I cannot stand is barefaced liars, and also it's so disingenuous. I mean, he's pro-EU, is not patriotic Britain, but he ensured that every candidate had the British flag on there, the Union Jack. He doesn't care about stuff like that. He's a globalist.
Well, I think he's very much a patriot, and I think he's very much in favour of Britain. And I mean, I don't agree with that. But on the point about Margaret Thatcher, you know, it's one thing writing an op-ed in the Telegraph or whichever newspaper that praises some of the things she did. Nobody in their right mind could claim that Margaret Thatcher had no positive impact on Britain. But you don't have to have a shrine to Margaret Thatcher in Number 10. There is a statue of her in Parliament, as you well know. There is a photo of her on the staircase in Number 10. It's not exactly as though she's been erased from history. All that's happened is that one portrait has been moved because maybe that's just not to Keir Starmer's taste, because he's not a Thatcherite, and why should he be?
Well, he shouldn't have used her name, Joe, in the election. And it's also just like the Democrats did and Biden did when he removed the Churchill bust. Do you remember, in the Oval Office? I just think it completely stinks. It's actually conning the public because of what he did during the election. I just think it's disgusting.
Why do we think this is such an important... Why do we think this is important?
It's an important part of our history. She's one of the best Prime Ministers we've ever had.
Well, I mean, again, it depends on your opinion. As I said, she's definitely one of the most consequential. There's no doubt about that. But she is recognised elsewhere in Number 10. She's recognised in Parliament. Her name is never going to be erased from history. And it's one portrait. And for me, this is a really good example of Conservative MPs and people on the right getting worked up about symbolism because
we would not remove Blair's painting or anything like that. It's completely churlish, and it demonstrates actually what a small man he is.
I think it's getting worked up about symbolism because when it comes to the substance of the arguments, at the moment, the Conservative Party and the right in general are all over the place. And one more thing, on reform, they have nothing whatsoever to say about any of this. They've been carping and Farage has been this. I've not seen a single solution from reform on anything whatsoever.
Right, OK. Ryan, Mark, you look like the kind of guy who might have a portrait of Margaret Thatcher at home.
I do.
Would you have taken it?
Absolutely.
He's got his eye on going in Number 10. You can see it there.
Take it home with you. I don't know.
I'd love to have it, actually. But yes, I agree with Andrea. The fact you spoke about Margaret Thatcher during the election, pure hypocrisy. And also, I think the greatest irony is probably Britain's worst Prime Minister is removing a portrait of Britain's best Prime Minister.
How can you say...
It's such a shame. It's sacrilegious. And I think Starmer is an idiot and a sad little man.
Pete, listen. Sorry, go on, Andy.
Sorry, Pete. Sorry. I just have to very briefly say, the fact you use the word sacrilegious, I think that actually speaks to a really significant problem with the Conservative Party. The Tory Party has been obsessed with Margaret Thatcher for too long. She might have had the solutions at the time. Again, that comes down to your point of view. But she left office in 1990. It's 34 years ago. Get a grip, Tories. Move on.
Go on, Pete. Go for it.
OK. On that, I actually do agree with you. However, what I will say on this issue of the painting, I actually think everyone's missed the point. This was a dead cat. The real arguments that we should be having is about the money that's being spent on net zero, about the whopping pay deals to the trade unions. This was to get everybody... This was jangling the keys to the right. They talk about that.
But we have been speaking about that. I've been on the media all week speaking about this.
This was Matthew Doyle, who's the director of comms, attempt to shift the narrative away from a very negative week for Keir Starmer. And unfortunately, too many people have fallen into the trap. But what I would... Sorry, I keep going up, but just one second. What I will say is that I do think that if this painting happened to be of a black woman, the same people saying, it doesn't matter about symbolism, will be singing a very different song. I do think that there is a big problem here of consistency on the left when it comes to removing things. You know, if the next time they want to tear down a photo of a donor to a university, I would remind people of this very argument. He says, well, it's just a picture. What does it mean?
Well, Dame Andrea, look, for me, Margaret Thatcher encompasses what it means to become a working-class Conservative.
Absolutely.
And I feel like this maybe is just because Keir Starmer can't bear looking at someone more working-class and more successful than him. What do you think?
Like I said, it's small man syndrome, actually.
Yeah, quite. Okie dokie. Any more thoughts, Andy, from you? What would you say? Who would he put up instead? Maybe Blair? Blair's going on there to think,
if it was my Downing Street study, you can be sure that there'd be a portrait of Blair.
Maybe you can have a picture of Keir Hardie's hat or something like that. You know, it's rather ridiculous.
But I would say I don't think. I'm sorry, Pete. I don't agree. I don't think this is anything to do with diversity. It's nothing to do with the fact that she's a woman. It's nothing to do with that. This is just about somebody saying, I'm putting my stamp on a building which is actually my office. And Keir Starmer's not a Thatcherite, and he's never said
this is to do with how the left hate Thatcher. The left hate Thatcher.
Indeed, we're going to have to leave it there. But coming up next on the Saturday 5, we've got the Bunch of Five. We'll be debating 5 topics, including whether Oasis should do a peace tour to stop the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News. Go nowhere.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, weather will be turning increasingly unsettled. We'll also start to see some outbreaks of rain developing, even some thunderstorms in places. That's because high pressure is starting to pull away to the northeast of the UK, allowing our southeasterly flow to develop, and this wall front starting to introduce some cloud from the south. And that's certainly the case as we head through the evening into the overnight period. More in the way of cloud pushing northwards across England and Wales. Some showers starting to break out, so locally heavy, particularly towards the far south and southeast towards the end of the night, where the odd thunderstorms possible. So the clearest skies lurking towards the northwest across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and here turning quite chilly in some rural spots into mid to upper single figures. Holding up though in the south, quite a humid night across some southern areas with lows in the high teens Celsius. As for Sunday, we'll start the day across the north and northwest of the UK on a fine note. Any early mist and low cloud lifting to give some sunshine at times. The sunniest weather towards the far northwest of Scotland. Heading further south though into England and Wales, more in the way of cloud around, and at this stage in the morning we'll start to see a few showers breaking out, but particularly across the central and southern part of England. Here again, 1 or 2 heavy, even thundery showers are possible. As we head through the day, those showers start to become more extensive across some central and southern parts of England, eventually working their way north into parts of northern England into the afternoon too. So it's the northwest of the UK and across some western spots, seeing the best of the lingering brightness with 1 or 2 lighter showers here. But those showers across England and Wales there, eastern parts of Wales, they're locally on the heavy side and could give some flooding in places as well. Temperatures peaking in the southeast at a very warm and quite humid 27 Celsius. As for Monday, well, low pressure will be in charge, so it stays very unsettled. We could see some further thundery showers across the east and northeast of the UK, with rain also working its way in from the west. Eventually turning fresher out across parts of Northern Ireland, temperatures here no better than 18 Celsius into the afternoon. An unsettled start into the coming working week, but things perhaps turning a bit drier towards the middle part of the week, with temperatures returning to the seasonal average.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you for your lovely emails coming in tonight about our topics. I've got Beth here, who said it was Gordon Brown who commissioned that picture of Margaret Thatcher. I never knew that. Interesting. We've also got some people saying, don't badmouth Nigel Farage. Interesting. Lots of people getting touchy about that. But no matter what you think, Maggie says, no matter what you think of Thatcher, she never would have put up with the illegal boats coming in. Wow, interesting time. Anyway, now it's time for this.
This week, as Starmer made his doom-laden speech, forecasting difficulties for the British people, Number 10 released a statement on how they are preparing for the funeral of Downing Street cat Larry, and he isn't even dead yet. Now, Red Starmer, Grim Keir, who I'd like to call him the prophet of doom, already started planning the media campaign and the strategy of when the cat eventually dies. Now, what I actually think is happening, Larry has lived through many Prime Ministers' premiership, and Starmer's frightened that Larry's going to let the cat out the bag.
Anyone here a cat owner?
No, not a chance. Couldn't pay me.
No. So I remember when I went to Downing Street and Larry the cat was there. I'm actually quite allergic to cats, so like, he came over and said hello, and I sneezed and he ran away. So yeah, me and Larry don't get on.
No, I'm more of a dog person myself, but I think it's good. I mean, the cat. Actually, Larry the cat was brought in to get rid of the rats.
Chief Mouser.
Chief Mouser. So I'm assuming we'll get a new cat hopefully at some point. Anyway,
does Keir Starmer have a dog? I'm pretty sure Boris.
I think they brought one with them. I'm pretty sure they did, although we're going to buy one to bring in when they moved into Downing Street. So they're definitely dog people,
Interesting stuff. All right, Ryan, Mark, you're up next.
Well, Angela Rayner has been caught behind a DJ raving in Ibiza, and I guess the question is it okay for MPs to distress? It's recess right now, and to go abroad and have a bit of fun? I think that's the question, really. I think it's okay. I think it's fine for MPs to take a breather, see their family. Camille Badenoch went away, took a step back from the leadership campaign. I think it's okay for politicians to go abroad.
You know, I have to disagree. I think when you've got Keir Starmer in the Rose Garden just a couple of days ago going, you're going to have the most painful budget, it's going to be a disastrous few months, it looks absolutely horrendous that Angela Rayner is partying in one of the most expensive clubs in Ibiza with her famous friend Denise Van Outen. I think the optics are absolutely horrendous for her.
I agree that the optics are terrible. I mean, as they're taking away the pensioners' winter fuel allowance, it looks like she's dancing on the potential graves of those people, and I do think it looks bad, but I will happen to agree that I do think MPs should be allowed to take time off. They should be allowed to take time with their family. They are people at the end of the day. But Angela Rayner has to remember that she's not just an MP, she's Deputy Prime Minister. She has a huge responsibility, and what she does and how she's viewed by people actually matters. And I think this was her kind of showing her lack of experience about being in power. And we see this right across the Labour government with that Jess Phillips as well, with making a few missteps. I think it's.
I think we'll see actually that this was a freebie, so you'll see it on the parliamentary interest. But also, as you said, it's what does this look like to the public? And one thing I cannot stand is the hypocrisy of the left. Look, when Michael Gove was dancing in a nightclub in Britain, how the left had such a go at him, but now they don't like us pointing out in the most expensive.
I'm going to
be hypocrites.
No, absolutely not. I'm very consistent. I thought that was fine. I think this is fine. I think MPs should be allowed to have a private life. I think if they want to go and have fun in Ibiza, that's absolutely fine. I don't think it's remotely at odds with the role of Deputy Prime Minister in any way, shape or form. And it's funny, we have this thing in Britain with politicians that if you go to Cornwall, even if you stay in a 5-star hotel that costs £700 a night, that's fine. But if you go to Ibiza, no.
Well, we just saw on the screen there an image of the headlines of Michael Gove going nuts in Ibiza, I think it was.
I think it was in Aberdeen, wasn't it? I think it was in Scotland.
Apologies.
Completely demonised, though, right? By the Mirror.
Well, look, I have no problem with MPs going on.
But she looks arrogant, doesn't she? She looks so full of herself. That's what I don't like.
No, she's just having a nice time.
I have an issue with she's behind the DJ. It's a bit elitist. I mean, be a part of the crowd.
I do just think that while Britain is about to... Well, Keir Starmer gives these speeches about how everything is going to get terrible, if not even worse, and Angela Rayner is doing this. I just think the optics stink. And I don't think it's badly timed, and I think it shows again that amateur level that video shouldn't exist. I mean, that's the thing. If the video didn't exist, we wouldn't be talking about it.
5 seconds. I think when we're constantly asking for our politicians to be more human, more real, and then we're saying this. We can't have it both ways.
Is that more human?
Yeah, I think it is actually.
Having a good time, I think.
I just think it's a super bad look for the Deputy Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who is, I would assume, is second in line to be Prime Minister of our country. If
I think she should try and oust Keir in the next 5 years and try and get top.
Don't think that's going to happen.
Anyway, moving on, something a little bit more light-hearted. So the Daily Star put out a very bizarre story yesterday, or today, I can't remember which day it was. They said Oasis would save the world, and apparently this is if they to tour on the borders of Ukraine and Russia and in Gaza. Well, we do have some updated news for you that tickets have now sold out for Oasis's reunion. Do you guys think that Oasis could save the world? This is like a Live Aid sort of style event. Do you think they could bring the world together?
I don't know. I think it took UN peacekeepers to get Oasis back together, let alone... I mean, I don't think they'll stay together till they even make it to the first gig at this point. So whether they can fix the world peace, I'm not quite sure about that
This
one.
is just another way to actually keep the story going, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a PR thing. And are they really going to actually get Putin there and
Could you imagine?
No, exactly, and get both sides talking? Of course not. It's a PR exercise.
Is their music that great anyway?
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Oh, come on. No.
Yeah.
Was you even born then?
No, 2000 I was born. So
2000, there you go. No, wouldn't remember one of the singles coming out. No, not
Taylor
at all.
Swift, though, I did go to Taylor Swift concert. I think she could save the world. I'm not sure about Oasis.
Well, not
Did
with her, not with
you
her
see Keir
greenhouse
Starmer there?
I didn't see Keir Starmer there, no.
Well, Taylor Swift certainly wouldn't be saving the world with her greenhouse emissions.
Hey, I wonder if
Very
Starmer will
much.
get free tickets to Oasis like he did Taylor
Oh,
Swift.
I'm sure he will. Well, it'll be interesting. And anyway, right, Peter, I believe you are up next.
Yes, so after a 5-year-old boy smashed a 3,500-year-old vase at a museum visit, is it not time that we start seeing less children everywhere? I don't understand what it is about this country that everything has to be child-friendly. Maybe, just maybe, adults can do something and the kids stay at home for once.
Well, Andrea, come on, this is over to you for this one.
Look, I'm a mum to a 7-year-old. Bah
Yes.
humbug, you must have some wonderful Christmases.
Much more quiet and peaceful.
For God's sake, we've all been a child at some point, and, you know, taking children to museums, that's how they learn about history. It's odd.
Yeah, but
You've actually got to blame the parents for not controlling them.
Yeah, again, I don't necessarily blame the kid, I do blame the parents, because I was always taught you look with your eyes, not your hands. But
I mean, it's probably excitement the child ran off. I mean, I've got a child with ADHD. I've got ADHD. That explains probably why I'm so outspoken. But I've got a child with ADHD, and he runs all over, and it is exhausting. But I don't think we should ban children. I think it's cool.
Right, Mark Lick, I can see you want to
agree, don't you?
No, I think there are some places where children shouldn't be. I actually came on the breakfast show yesterday to talk about banning children from pub gardens. And the same with planes. It's like when I go on a 6-hour flight to New York or wherever, and there's a child screaming next to me, a rambunctious, noisy
So
family.
you're banning them from holidays by doing that?
I just can't stand it. And after work, I want to distress.
Headphones on. Put headphones on.
Garden, I want to relax. And you have a screaming child. Just stay away.
Andy, is this not the same Puritan approach that they're blaming Keir Starmer for locking up the freezers? Now they want to shut children up.
Oh, it's got nothing to do with Keir Starmer or Labour. I agree with Andrea. I actually think my local pub has a really good approach, which is that they say, it's an incredibly family-friendly area, actually, but this pub specifically, they really welcome families. They roll the red carpet out for families until 7 p.m.
Yeah.
And then at 7 p.m, which is kind of when most kids are going home anyway and off to bed, then they say, actually, if you could now leave this to the adults, and I think it works really well.
You know, so look, for me, I think we need more children in this country. We've got to make it better for parents. We've got to make it easier, not worse. Anyway, right, moving
I'd
on.
make more places dog-friendly as well.
Well,
I'd rather have more dogs in places.
Right, Andy, over to you.
So, as we know, Labour is looking at changing the rules on smoking. They've brought back Rishi Sunak's legislation on clamping down on smoking and banning it for people from a certain age. But Jeremy Clarkson has decided that he's not having it. And at his new pub in the Cotswolds, he is saying, please do actually smoke in my pub garden. Or specifically, he's saying, if you smoke, that's up to you. Please be considerate. And I have to say, I'm very much in favour of clamping down on people smoking to some degree, but when it comes to pub gardens and and nightclub smoking areas, I actually am not in favour of banning smoking in those places. I really am not. I just don't. I think there's something kind of almost romantic about being able to do that in those places.
Thought this is all
I'm a non-smoker,
state, isn't it? It's all nanny state. Like, let the businesses decide.
I agree with Andy, though. Actually, I mean, I'm a non-smoker. I've never tried it, but to go in a beer garden and smoke, that's up to them. You know, they enjoy it. I mean, my mum smoked, my late mum smoked for all her life since she was 13 until her 80, nearly 80. And she said that was her way to relax and also go out and bond with people.
Absolutely.
So,
well, that's it. I think you're at risk of eradicating a culture. I really enjoy the idea of going to a nightclub. I'm a frequent goer to Infernos in South West London.
Among others, I'm sure.
What an establishment.
Sharing a cigarette socially. I think it's great, and you just spark a conversation. I think removing that really just takes away so much.
Pete, look, pubs are the backbone of so many towns and cities in this country. It's a cultural tradition in the summer for people to go out and have a beer and a smoke. What's the big deal?
Oh, I completely agree with everybody on the panel, but this is the real issue is the impact it's going to have on hospitality. I know pubs and clubs at the minute are literally dying. Well, I think it's 7 a week closed now. And I think this is only going to add fuel to that. I think what annoyed me actually was the way that they said, oh, well, this is about saving money for the NHS. Well, I can think of a few other ways we could save money for the NHS.
But what about the drug problem?
Yeah, there's loads
I mean,
of things,
that's a major thing they should be tackling.
Yeah, but I do feel that this is, again, it's nanny state, it's big state, it's Keir knows best, and I'm doing this for your good, whether you like it or not. You don't have free will anymore under Keir Starmer.
Very quickly, look, final word, Andy. Is there not a good argument to be made for saving lives on the NHS by cutting back smoking in those areas?
Absolutely, and what I am in favour of is actually broadly Rishi's proposals, which is that at a certain level we should just kind of phase it out. I think that's good. But for the time being, I'm not in favour of saying if you're in a pub garden you can't smoke.
I said you was a closet conservative.
Oh, it's all happening here tonight on the Saturday 5. Right, anyway, moving on. Still ahead, we'll answer all of your crazy questions in Ask the 5. No topics are off limits, and I wonder what you have in store for us this week. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Paul Spires is a much-loved part of this South London community.
When I first got here, it was so quiet, and after 3 months, I decided to buy myself a speaker. I started playing music. Everyone loved it.
So when 200 residents from Beckenham chipped in more than £3,000 to send a sweeper on a summer break to Portugal, it was a moment of great local spirit.
I'm overwhelmed with it. I'm just here to do a job to the best of my ability, and the way they've reacted is brilliant.
Lisa Knight, an estate agent, said she started the campaign after becoming friends with Mr. Spears.
Last Monday, I bumped into him after work. It was a 30-degree day and he'd been working all day. So we stood and had a chat like we often do. And he explained to me that it was his birthday on Tuesday and he wanted to save up to go to Portugal because he's only ever been abroad once for his 60th birthday. And after he left, I decided to make the GoFundMe. So we shared it on the local Beckenham Appreciation Group on Facebook, which is huge, and it just flew away.
But Mr. Spears was unable to take the trip due to his employer's rules on accepting gifts. A solution appeared when a travel company spotted an opportunity to help out.
onthebeach.com had an amazing idea to run a competition whereby Paul would be the winner. He had to be aged between the age of 62 and 64, be loved in Beckenham, have the surname Spears and love Elvis, and so he still gets to go on holiday.
We ought to have matched that £3,000 to donated to who I have wanted nominated, and after cancer research, which they've already done.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Thank you for your emails coming in thick and fast. We've got Babs here who says, don't ban outside smoking, but keep the areas separate. I think I agree with you there. Bruce says, if someone owns a pub and a pub garden, who does Starmer think he is to tell people what to do with their pub gardens? I also agree, let people decide. I think let businesses decide, don't you? Anyway, right, so talking of tonight's topics, it's now time for this. Right, this is the part of the show we have no idea what you're going to ask us, but let's see what you've got for us this week. Right, it seems a lot of young people have less places to go, less places they can go for free. Do you think they should increase funding to libraries and after-school clubs in underfunded areas to reduce the rates of drug and gang activities? That's from Greg. Oh, that's a big one.
I mean, I think, you know, as a parent, I think times have changed, actually. I mean, I used to work in schools as well. I used to teach in schools. And I don't think children want these clubs to go to now. If anything, I mean, I think if they did stuff where, like, coding clubs and learn how to do coding and or sports stuff or music, actually get the creative juices flowing. I think that's far more important than just somewhere where they're going to congregate. And let's face it, children have always been there on street corners congregating together, but I think it's been decades since children have actually gone.
I have to admit, I agree with you on that. I
places.
think this idea that these are kind of after-school clubs or leisure clubs or whatever are the solution to things like knife crime and all that, it's a little overblown. I think there might be an argument to it, but I do think it is an overblown argument. But I do think that, like I said, times have changed. People want different things, but I think how you fix most of how young people are, getting involved in gangs and things, I actually think that comes down to parental involvement. I think a lot of parents have to step up their game. This is a different time. There are different challenges, and you have to get more involved about what your kids are looking at.
There's already so much out there. Look at the Cubs, the Brownies. My little one does Stagecoach, singing, dancing.
Amazing,
Spicing up the offering, incorporating technology, make it more interesting for young people, not just a library.
Okay, let's move on to the next question, shall we? So, Sylvie asks, New Year's Eve fireworks is now a ticketed event with limited people. Why can't Carnival be the same? I totally agree with you, Sylvie. I mean, look, I think the most important thing we can do is save lives and reduce crime on the streets of London, which are already at their peak. That event seems to attract the worst criminals in London. It's not a good look for the Carnival. I would just move it somewhere more appropriate, like Hyde Park. What do you guys think?
No, Carnival's not just any other event. We were talking about this earlier. It can't just be moved. It's not just an identikit event that can just be dropped into any old park. This is a nearly 60-year-old annual event that is completely about celebrating a culture, and you can't just move it like anything else.
Surely we can just ticket it. Surely we can ticket it so we know who's going, how many people are attending.
No, you're completely you're misunderstanding.
I'm sorry, but this argument, it doesn't make sense because, yes, it's a 60-year-old thing, but it's not 60 years ago. We have to grow up and actually live in the real world. There are people walking around with knives at these things, machetes. And, just to say, it's 60 years old, it means so much. Well, do you know what? If it's about celebrating culture, then they should be the ones to start saying, maybe we should clean this thing up, and moving it off the street and into a confined area that could be better policed, better patrolled and better controlled, would be a better representation of this culture, taking responsibility for their own and actually saying, no, we don't agree with this, and we're going to do something to fix it.
Right, Mark, last word from you on this question.
I think if we enhance security, I mean, I saw metal detectors when I went there. If they get more metal detection, that's a way of preventing knife crime. And I think moving it isn't the solution. It's been there for nearly 6 decades. Keep it there, but find better ways to improve security.
OK, well, moving on to our next question, then. John has asked, Starmer hit the milestone of 6,000 boat crossings since August 27th, the 54th day of his premiership. Liz Truss reached it just after 29 days, Rishi after 38. So is Starmer going to stop the boats? Dame Andrea, what do you think?
Look, it's a major problem, and I think that we've got to come out with the ECHR. I mean, I had a petition going and got over 50,000 signatures. So I think we've got to be quite radical like this. And this is why, I mean, I voted for Brexit to control our borders. But unfortunately, when we're still in the ECHR, that's another element of it that we need to ensure we come out of.
Andy, what do you think?
It always seems to be the solution. People on the right seems to be, if we just leave this one thing, if we just blow this up. No, it's more complicated than that. It's a really, really difficult problem. It's a combination of building relationships with our European allies, which we're rebuilding. It's a conversation of dealing with it at source. I don't think it's going to be as straightforward as Keir Starmer.
I don't think it's... Well, it's creating a pull.
I mean, for whatever reason, 14 years of Conservative government seems to have made it that way.
No, it's always been that way, unfortunately.
Well...
OK, look, guys, well, look, I want to thank you so much for coming on our show tonight. We've had a brilliant time. I hope you've all had a good time. Yes. I hope you've had a great time at home as well. So thank you, Dame Andrea Jenkins. Thank you, Ryan Mark Parsons, and our spin doctors here, Andy Williams and Peter Barnes. I don't think you really channeled our Alistair Campbell and Dom Cummings. Thankfully,
Anyone fancy
Give it a go.
Thank you all for sticking with me tonight. My first time doing this live, so apologies for any auto cue issues, but you've got someone more professional up next. You've got the brilliant Leo Kirst with the Saturday Night Showdown. Thank you so much for watching the Saturday 5, and we'll be back next week when I'm sure Darren Grimes will be returning. Thank you all.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, weather will be turning increasingly unsettled. We'll also start to see some outbreaks of rain developing, even some thunderstorms in places. That's because high pressure is starting to pull away to the northeast of the UK, allowing our southeasterly flow to develop, and this wall front starting to introduce some cloud from the south. And that's certainly the case as we head for the evening into the overnight period. More in the way of cloud pushing northwards across England and Wales. Some showers starting to break out, locally heavy, particularly towards the far south and southeast towards the end of the night, where the odd thunderstorms possible. So the clear skies lurking towards the northwest across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and here turning quite chilly in some rural spots into mid to upper single figures. Holding up though in the south, quite a humid night across some southern areas with lows in the high teens Celsius. As for Sunday, we'll start the day across the north and northwest of the UK on a fine note. Any early mist and low cloud lifting to give some sunshine at times. The sunniest weather towards the far northwest of Scotland. Heading further south, though, into England and Wales, more in the way of cloud around. And at this stage in the morning, we'll start to see a few showers breaking out, but particularly across the central and southern part of England. Here again, one or two heavy, even thundery showers are possible. As we head through the day, those showers start to become more extensive across some central and southern parts of England, eventually working their way north into parts of northern England into the afternoon too. So it's the northwest of the UK and across some western spots, seeing the best of the lingering brightness with one or two lighter showers here. But those showers across England and Wales there, eastern parts of Wales, they're locally on the heavy side and could give some flooding in places as well. Temperatures peaking in the southeast at a very warm and quite humid 27 Celsius. As for Monday, well, low pressure will be in charge, so it stays very unsettled. We could see some further thundery showers across the east and northeast of the UK, with rain also working its way in from the west, eventually turning fresher out across parts of Northern Ireland. Temperatures here no better than 18 Celsius into the afternoon. An unsettled start into the coming working week, but things perhaps turning a bit drier towards the middle part of the week, with temperatures returning to the seasonal average.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
How would you like an extra £3,000 in your bank account each month for an entire year? Well, it could be yours with our £36,000 secret salary to be won. You'll get £36,000 in cash to do whatever you like with over the coming year. And the best news? It's totally tax-free, which means you'll get every penny to spend. For a chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB08 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, coming up at the Saturday Night Showdown. As Britpop's biggest band reunites, The Guardian has labelled Oasis as the most damaging pop cultural force in recent British history. But does this accusation really stack up? Or is it just left-wing cultural elites sneering at the working class? And as Angela Rayner lives it up in Ibiza, Keir Starmer wants to ban smoking outside pubs. Boris Johnson has waded into the free speech row but seemed to forget that he oversaw the creation of the authoritarian legislation that Starmer will use to police our speech. And Elon Musk's X, formerly known as Twitter, has been banned in Brazil over a row about disinformation. It comes in the week when Mark Zuckerberg said the White House pressured Facebook to censor legitimate content. Do you believe that our political leaders are just keeping us safe from fake news, or do they want to control the narrative? This is your Saturday Night Showdown. Discussing all tonight's topics with me are my brilliant panel. Joining me tonight are Reem Ibrahim from the Institute for Economic Affairs and comedian Jonathan Cogan from the Institute for Having a Laugh. But first, let's get your latest news headlines from Sophia Wensler.
Leo, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. It's just gone 8 o'clock. Your top story this hour. All shows for Oasis's reunion tour in the UK and Ireland have now sold out. After a long day of queuing and website glitches, the Britpop band announced on X that there are now no more tickets available for general sale. The band also warned fans to be wary of counterfeit tickets being sold at inflated prices online. The warring Gallagher brothers are setting differences aside after a 15-year absence from the stage. A 32-year-old mother and a man who were attacked in separate incidents during the Notting Hill Carnival weekend have now died. Cher Maximan was stabbed at the carnival while attending the event with her 3-year-old child. The 32-year-old was taken to hospital in a critical condition, but despite the best efforts of medical staff, she died from her injuries. Meanwhile, Muzi Imnetu, who worked as a top chef, was found unconscious on Monday evening near Notting Hill and also died from his injuries. Metropolitan Police said the deaths had been devastating for both families, and they were now both being treated by the force as murder investigations. The social media platform X has been banned in Brazil after a long-standing disinformation row. The move follows a feud between Elon Musk and the Brazilian Supreme Court over a failure to block